Good afternoon, Coast to Coast fans. It's Mark Oldup, Sky Halpern here with the Sports Insanity Network, back along with my brother Mike Shields, coming in live from Denver, Colorado. Mike, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm good. I've just finished going bananas yesterday. It was wonderful. The Savannah Bananas were in town. It was good to see some.
You took the kid. Did you take the kids?
Yes, it was good to see some not depressing baseball.
I've heard that I am in a lottery here for New York, so I've heard it has got to be it is one of the greatest times if you're a baseball fan, even if you're not a baseball fan.
Yeah, it's a good time. It's the one baseball game my daughter enjoyed quite a bit.
Oh, that's great. So, for all of you who don't know, the Savannah Bananas are like the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball, and it's if you've seen the specials on ESPN, and even if you haven't, go watch it. It's really an entertaining time. So, as Mike and I normally talk, we talk our hometown team, the Mets, and I wish it could be a happier time right now, but over the last week, the Mets are now 1-11 in the last 12 games with little or no help from the pitching. We had talked about this before the trade deadline and on what the Mets should be targeting. Mike and I had mentioned a lot of starters. To our dismay, a starter was not gotten. Even with the return of Kodai Senga and Sean Manaea, it hasn't been all roses. Mike, I know as a Mets fan, we suffer enough this last stretch, hard to swallow.
Yeah, I still think there's a part of me that still thinks the second half of August and first week of September will be a turnaround. Because I think they have the skills, but man, when you look at the you know hovering around 200 averages of five or six of their players over this span, and even longer for some of them, it's quite troubling. And I don't think the Mets or fans are going to care very much um, about what happens to Pete Alonso or Lindor or Mark Vientos or Alvarez if they all keep doing pretty this terribly. I mean, you cannot have Um, I mean, Pete Alonso, this is terrible. I mean, for him in his contract year, it makes it all the harder, right? He's going to still want, no matter what happens this season, he's going to still want kind of a max contract of sorts. And the Mets are going to say, well, the first half was great. Maybe you're getting older and you're just tired the second half of the year. We want a player that we're going to pay for two halves of the year.
And that could go to a lot of factors. I mean, has Pete definitely earned a new contract? Yes, but the question is, like Mike said, he's gonna want a all-inclusive, all-in deal. But the question is, Mike, he's 31 years old right now. How much is a max deal for someone like him?
Oh, I think, well, I mean, isn't he represented by Scott Boris? Isn't that his guy now? And
Yes, it
so,
is.
I mean, I think Boris is going to trick him into asking for 35 mil a year or 30 mil a year. And that is for a 31-year old who apparently can't do much the second half of the year except swat at some things to try to chase Daryl Strawberry's all-time record. Um, and listen, sometimes I think Alonso seems just pretty giddy about that, and it seems like that's his sole focus. Well, it's gonna be real great. Real, what a celebration if the Mets are 1-12 and he gets it next game, but they lose again, right?
And that's a great point because right now, the Mets were in a comfortable position up towards about 2 weeks ago. The Mets were in a pretty comfortable position. And then all the talk about breaking, becoming the all-time might have clouded him a little bit, and that's what he's swinging for. So hopefully he gets it over with, and then we can get him back on track because God knows we need the polar bear. Um,
It's all right, stuff falling.
we That's okay. You know, and it's not just one position. Mike has pointed it out flatly. Lindor has been off, Vientos has been off, Alvarez has been off. It's not just Pete Alonso. It's a little bit of everybody, and hoping with the end of August, you get that cool down. The return to New York tonight, hopefully they'll be able to turn it around and get back to playing they want. You know, the thing that I was concerned about in the beginning, but not as much now as Cedric Mullins when he came over and the slow start he had. If you want to see the article, please go on to www.thesportsinsanitynetwork.com to read the article. Cedric Mullins is off to a 4-24 start with the Mets. He did break out a little bit with a home run and a stolen base in the last two games, but I don't think Mets fans have to worry because of his experience. What do you think, Mike?
I think that failure is contagious, and that with so many Mets failing, and it's surprising because you'd figure they'd have some sort of attitude leader in that clubhouse, and I just think I'm concerned. I still think they could turn it around, but I think also that my patience and hope that they'll turn it around, and my patience even in an off season is going to be a whole lot higher than Steve Cohen's, and I think that he's probably going ballistic right now. I mean, he's probably not probably he is going ballistic right now. And when you have someone with that kind of money, I wouldn't be surprised if he just tears it all up, man. And fight at the end of the season, if the Mets miss the playoffs, or even if they make the playoffs, kind of squeak in as a wild card, I wouldn't be surprised if he fires the manager, he fires the general manager. I mean, because he just doesn't
Well, I
have.
don't think Stearns will go. I think Mendoza will be the downfall. Stearns had just signed an extension. He's not going anywhere.
And you got
But
billions and billions and billions of dollars. I don't know, but this is something that um, it's unacceptable because it's the amount of money and the lack of parity between teams. So really, there's only 6 or 8 teams that can be competitive in Major League Baseball in any given season. 10 teams, whatever it is, right? I mean, just think about it. Right now, there are only 7 teams realistically competing for 6 spots,
correct.
right? Which that is really bad. That's bad for baseball. And as much as I don't want to see the owners get all the money and the players are calling for it, but the idea of some sort of salary cap or more significant revenue sharing has to be brought in, because just from a baseball perspective, that if you're a Marlins fan, a Nationals fan, Reds fan, fill in the blank with a whole bunch of other teams, you're not going to be competitive. You maybe have a little blip for one year, and then your good players who helped you get there will get to their free agent year and lack of controllability, and they'll go somewhere else. And so yeah, you'll have teams that have a blip for a year, maybe two, and then you'll have the same old teams that are just kind of kicking around.
You know, a lot of my angle of it has been a lot of the pitching, and the Mets have made a lot of move over the last 2 days. They have up upped their invitations to AAA to a number of players who we're gonna expect over the next 2 years. Names like Williams, and Clifford and Tong have all been moved up to AAA. But now the news shifts in focus around two Mets AAA pitchers and Brandon Sproat and Nolan McLean, who are on literally the cusp of being called up for spot starts in the next 2 weeks. Now, if you don't know who these two are, they're two of the Mets' top pitching prospects. They would not even consider them during the trade deadline to move, even for a top pitching prospect. Mike, we've seen rookie pitchers with this kind of talent, from Matt Harvey to Steven Strasburg to Paul Skeens, all show up pretty fast, but better than 50% are overused too quickly.
Well,
What
look
is
at
your thought on bringing up McLean and Sproat?
well, look at how'd Matt Harvey do after a little bit.
Harvey was good for the first two seasons.
Yeah, and what about who's the other fellow you mentioned?
Strasburg
Strasburg.
was out of the, yeah. That's why I'm saying these are two fireball pitchers who have the same type of
Yeah, I listen.
pitching
I don't.
fortitude.
I think that on some level, this soft pedaling. I mean, these are professional ball players. Um, if they have the stuff, then it's on them to get their heads right to be able to maintain what they have. They have top-notch trainers in the physical part. They even have mental coaches and that sort of thing as well. But I get a little tired when people say, "Oh, they brought him up too quick. They couldn't handle the pressure." Well, if you can't handle the pressure, then leave. Then go become a paid little league coach, travel ball coach for one of these teams, and just leave. I mean, if the big league team needs you, you have the stuff, then you need to come up and perform. And right now, from a starting pitcher perspective, I think the Mets should have a little tryout, and see which of those spot starter shines, and throw Jonah Tong in the mix and bring them all the way up, because you know what, the Mets haven't had exciting teenagers spring onto the scene. I mean, Dwight Gooden was good for a couple years, more than a couple years,
Who
and
cares?
so this idea, it's the same thing with, like, pitchers can only go 82 pitches, 82 and a half pitches. And you know what? I, I don't have as much sympathy for major league players now. They sit out when they have a hangnail, right? And that didn't used to be how it was, right? I mean, Nolan Ryan beat up Robin Ventura, and he was
Yep.
bleeding, and then he went back and pitched. So I think players are wimps, and I mean, just think about Kirk Gibson, right? He wouldn't be out for indigestion. I mean, he was drinking, keg of beer in between innings, and playing injured, and I I'm just a little fed up with the whining, and the not they shouldn't have any answers. In fact, all these players shouldn't say a word to the media. They should just say, I probably need to go hit off the tee a little bit, and get back to working their game. The Mets, I think they'll find a way out, but it is just pathetic. I think the Savannah Bananas could have beaten them this weekend. Um, it's just a shame, and I think the Mets and the Yankees are both disappointing.
As we've talked on the network, the Yankees and Mets, if the season ended today, even if both teams made the playoffs, they most likely would not go far as of right now. The other name that Mike mentioned and that I mentioned is Jonah Tong, who was moved up from AA to AAA just this other day. He is also a top prospect in pitching for the Mets. Has the same type of stuff, but it's just moved up to AAA. So we'll probably see Sproat and McLean first, and then maybe we'll get a sampling of Tom. But it's unlikely, but anything can surprise, especially in September. Um, the biggest concern right now for the Mets is where they're at in the standings. And right now, we're not looking at them in the head of the division because that owns to the Philadelphia Phillies. So now, as Mike said, we're looking into the wild card, and there are three teams that are in the wild card that are there. The Mets hold that third and last spot. And what used to be a 5-game lead is now down to a 1.5-game lead against the Cincinnati Reds. Mike, of the position the Mets are in, who should they be more concerned about? The Phillies gaining distance or the Reds catching up?
Oh, I think the Reds catching up, because, you know, again, once you get into the playoffs, anything's possible. But it doesn't matter if the Reds are a game ahead of the Mets, and the Mets are in the last, for that last playoff spot, and the Mets are 2 games behind the Phillies. If it tightens up that much, I mean, it won't. But if that was the case, right? If the Mets are in the last wild card spot and they're just 2 or 3 games back from the Phillies, and Cincinnati just edges them out, then they're out. They go home. So I think you have to really look at widening that gap for that final spot. I think really the formula is the same: win ball games. I mean, you can't really control, except when you're playing the Phillies. You can't really control what the Phillies do. So you play to win, and that's how you widen the gap, and that's how, in theory, you close the gap with the Phillies. But um, the name of the game is get into the playoffs. Um, I think it would be great if they went into the playoffs roaring and caught the Phillies, make them take the playoff spot. But at the end of the day, yeah, 1-11. I mean, I that's I I mean, just think how good the Reds must feel, right? Their whole payroll is
Well,
less
yeah,
than what you're paying Soto, and
I was about to say their payroll is. I mean, Soto and Alonso's payroll equals the entire Reds team for the next few years.
right, and so and that's where the embarrassment should come, right? And it also, as good as in theory, right, and that's what we're talking about in theory, Soto is, and he's still a productive player even when he's doing really terribly, but is he worth 50 mil a year?
And that question is not easily answered, as one of the things that we had pointed out, that Mike Rifkin and I had pointed out, was Juan Soto's lack of ability of getting runners in when they're in scoring position. Last night he did that very well with Lindor and brought him in right in the top of the inning, but after that it was back to same old with the Mets.
Well, and look at Nimmo
It
striking out 500 times in 18 at bats or something. I mean, just it's unreal. I mean, you
He's in
have
a horrible slump. Things are just not going the Mets way, and you can't just say that because they're paid hundreds of millions of dollars to go out and essentially play a kid's game.
yeah, I'm not
But
begrudging them a slump, but listen, take someone like a Tony Gwynn, right? And then you take someone who's the worst strikeout person possible.
Chris Davis,
Yeah,
Chris Davis.
someone like that, right? Yeah, yeah. The Mets have a quality enough players that should be focused on their just basics, pitch recognition, that they're at least, 60, 70% of the 60% of the way to Tony Gwynn, or at least 50, right? 50% of the way to Tony Gwynn. And they're just not. I mean, how can you have Brandon Nimmo striking out more than Chris Davis? It's unreal. I mean, that he should be embarrassed. He should sit
It
bench himself.
that and that's not a horrible idea either. Sometimes the sense of being pulled out kind of lights you on fire. If you look what happened with Francisco Alvarez, was absolutely caca at the plate, was sent down, went on a massive tear. Now he hasn't been on that massive tear like he was down in AAA, but his hitting has improved. Not that you notice it so much, of course, but it's improved, but it's not improved to the point where you need it. Neither has Vientos. McNeil is starting to show a little bit. Marte's homered in back-to-back series. The
Yeah.
question doesn't become what is the problem. The question becomes is how to fix it.
Well, and I don't know, man. I've been looking at Alvarez. I swear, I think he may be enjoying too many uh too many meals out on the road, cheesesteaks in Philly, and it seems like he's having trouble getting the bat around his midsection. It seems like he's been expanding a little bit, and not in the ways you like. Maybe and listen, I'm not one to talk. I could definitely be one of the dad bod Savannah banana cheerleaders that they have. They, if you don't know, that they have got their cheerleaders are they're called the dad bod cheerleaders, and they have little pom poms, and they have belly shirts, and that's their cheerleaders. So
Oh,
I am not like body shaming him, but again, if you're getting paid millions of dollars, it's your job, then you need to be in tip top shape. And I feel like Alvarez has gotten a little mushy. And I think that may be true for some other players too, either mushy in the brain or mushy in the bod. I think Soto's starting to whine like a little baby. I mean, this is, someone as good as Soto, right? He's been on what, 17 teams? I don't think he's proven himself
five,
five, but I don't think he's proven himself to be
three.
this.
Sorry, four.
He hasn't proven himself to be this great teammate. If you're getting paid what he should be, he is. You should be the best teammate ever, no matter what. Fail nothing, and that is, and that should be true of any baseball player, man. If you're so honored to play right bench and get paid the league minimum, man, you should be the best teammate ever. Um,
I couldn't. I can't say I disagree. I am a personal fan of this young roster, but with a young roster comes inexperience. That's why the Mets got Chris Mullins to get a little more experience in the outfield. I mean, this is a slump unlike I've seen in a long time. I mean, this is a Mets team that hasn't really. crumbled this much in a while. The Mets need to regain focus and they need to wake up. And if you look at the Mets' upcoming schedule over the next few weeks, it's all NL East division, and then they'll meet up with a couple of other wild card potentials. But with the youngness and the hungriness of Cincinnati, the Mets have to have their eyes wide open.
Yeah, and I think the best thing Stearns could do is try to have as many, keep stocking that farm system. Some of the real potentials. You get them up to AAA as quickly as possible. So Vientos and Beatty and Alvarez, bring up who's the Mets catcher prospect? What's his name? Savallo? No,
The other, no, that's center field. Sorry, I almost said
um,
Williams. Not AJ McEwing.
anyway, but bring
Um,
up those guys to
which
AAA.
one? Not Pareda.
Yeah, Pareda. Bring him up to
Oh,
AAA.
okay.
So both this year and next year, you start a new way of operating. It stuck me with what Derek Jeter said a couple months ago now, probably at this point, where he said, even when I was on the Yankees for a couple years, I always felt like there was someone itching to take my job in the minor leagues, right, in the Yankees organization. So I always played like I was auditioning, and I think the Mets, I think some of these Mets, I think Vientos and Beatty on some level think they have a spot. Yeah, some things got to shake out. We'll work through it, but we have a spot in the long term future of the Mets. No, man, and Alvarez, I think he does too. I think you start pushing up from the bottom, and you make those guys question that. You make those guys question that, and even a McNeil and Nimmo, hey, Cohen should go to them and say, I have enough money. I'm willing to eat your salaries. If there's someone better than you, they're going to come and take your job. And then you'll be a laughing stock of the league.
And there's nothing wrong with what Mike is saying. It's healthy competition. You're grooming these kids down in double and triple A. Give them a fair shot. Let them have a shot at making the team. If they're not going to make them, you trade them. If not, you go from wherever. I have been very big on Kevin Pareda, but I thought Mike was going with Hageman. That's who I thought he was looking at.
Bring up
Um,
both of them. I mean, put them both there. So there's someone. It's like someone taking shots at you from AAA, and because I think that this. Oh, I just need time to develop. You've had time. These guys have had time. They've gotten significant major league at bats. They've had significant time to retool, getting sent back down. I think at some point you say you got to put up or shut up, and then okay, great. They can go to the Marlins and get a nice contract and be successful on a team that will never get into the playoffs. Fine. I mean, you have lots of these players who burn out on a team or have attitude issues, and they go and get a nice little fat contract from a team that's never going to go anywhere, right? And that's fine. They'll make their bank and be able to retire. That's fine. But you'd think some of them want to win. That's why if I can't root for the Mets, I'm going to be rooting for the Brewers in the offseason.
and the Brewers, as much as I hate to say it, had a great series against the Mets. One more topic I want to touch on is with dealing with base running. I'm sure as Mike saw the game pretty much I did. Do you think it was a mistake not to pinch run for Starling Marte in that
No,
final play? Okay.
he's
I
fast.
mean,
He's smart.
it took the most perfect throw to get him. It was a brilliant throw.
Right.
But with having Tyrone Taylor available, who is faster than Marte, I was just curious on your thought on would you have
I don't know. I mean, listen, Marte's the only guy who's been getting any hits, doing anything useful. So I think after this season, the Mets will move on from Tyrone Taylor. I think they'll move on from Starling Marte if they can. I think they'll. I think they may even do an off-season trade with some of their dearth of third baseman, second baseman. I think it wouldn't be a bad idea if there's some real. I was taking a look at the free agent third base market. You want to do a shot over the bow. You get kind of an aging but really still productive third baseman. You sign him to a 2-year deal where you're willing to eat either with an opt out or a whatever, and you're willing to eat it. Send a shot over the bow at Vientos and Beatty and say, get your act together.
You know, when you want honesty, this is the guy to go to.
I mean, what
Always
else are
will
you
give
going
it
to
to you
do? I mean,
straight. And even as
I
much as Mike loves the Mets, it's it's hard to be honest when you're a fan at times because you want to be that positive influence, but sometimes you got to tell the truth and you got to tell it like it is.
You got to, and I listen. I want Vientos to be permanently like that 100 or so games that he had. Was it last season or 2 seasons, whatever it was, last season, I guess. But he's clearly not. He's clearly not, and frankly, I think both he and Beatty, and maybe it's not fair to judge them on their facial expression, but they seem a little bit too lackadaisical and too just laid back about things. And frankly, Brandon Nimmo doesn't seem to be getting all that angry about striking out as much as he does. He just kind of walks away like, his older sister took his favorite toy, and that's about it.
Let's go wrap it up for here on Coast to Coast here on the Sports Insanity Network. Mark Halpern along with Michael Shields. I want to thank you all for stopping by to check in on us and see how we're doing. Mike and I will be recording again next week for Coast to Coast following up. And just because baseball season's going to end doesn't mean this guy and I are gone. Doesn't mean doesn't mean we'll be talking about football. We could be talking about how they throw dumbbells over the ice in Denver and see how far they go. You never
Or
know.
or anything on ESPN 8 The Ocho. There's some really interesting, like, house. Have you seen this roof ball? Roof ball on ESPN 8 The Ocho? Unreal.
No, I had not seen Roofball. Michelle and I were watching the Microsoft Excel Championships the other
Yes,
night.
watch roof ball. I'm getting into axe throwing. There's all sorts of interesting things on there.
Actually, I like Don't Drop the Balloon. That is, I don't let the
Yeah,
balloon bounce. Yeah,
but look up roof
but
ball.
everybody, Roofball, we'll have to check that out on ESPN the Ocho. Thank you to Dodgeball for introducing us to that. Again, thank you all. Please check us out on Facebook, on X at SIN Real, at www.thesportsinsanitynetwork for all your blogs and vlogs. For Mark Goldup's Guy Halpern, along with Michael Shields, I want to thank you all for stopping in, and we'll catch you on the flip side.